Hello, Warhammer fans, and welcome to 9-Inch Charge. Today, we're going to talk about the most recent Old World Development Diary titled The More Things Change, the More Things Stay the Same. I understand we are a little bit late to the party, but sometimes it's all right to make an entrance and be fashionably late, isn't it? I think.
Absolutely.
I've been full of cold, so it's been difficult to organise, but it's just given us more time to digest the article. And Tom, I've been making notes. I've got my two Danny's beer mat here, and on the back, I've got all my notes. So,
That's
endless
incredible.
uses for them. I know, not only can you rest your drink on it, you can also scribble down notes after you've a few pints. If I can read my handwriting on the back of this beer mat, maybe we'll have a half-decent video. But there is lots to talk about in this article. It is all about the rules and things that are staying the same and things that are changing. Lots to sink our teeth into. So why don't we just start I'll just read the very beginning of the article and then we'll go through it kind of blow by blow. When we embarked upon the daunting task of designing Warhammer the Old World, we wanted to create a modern game in the mold of Warhammer Fantasy Battle, a reimagining of the classic tabletop war game that would appeal to both veterans of the Old World and newcomers alike. Now, what it says here when it says they want to create a modern game, what I'm reading into that is that they want to create a more streamlined game.
Yeah, I'm reading into that exactly the same.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with streamlining parts of the game. It's just we don't want to see a dumbing down of the game, I suppose.
No, absolutely. Like, I think my favorite bit about the Old World game is just how nuanced it can be.
Mm.
I like having those.
It could be clunky, couldn't it? At the same time.
Yeah, it had its moments where it was very clunky.
We've all been stuck in that multi-combat where nobody knows what is going on or what adds up to where and who flees in what direction and all the rest of it. But yeah, I mean, it's nice that it'll be something familiar. It's cool that there is something new and modern coming along. I think previously, Tom, you were talking about whether or not it would have an app.
I did. I said that in the last one we recorded. Modern to me is an app.
Yeah.
So, I'm such a terrible person for things like that. I just want an app. Want everything on my phone.
I think it'd be cool, quick reference for rules, things like that. The thing for me that I would most like is like a battle scribe or scroll builder type thing, because building lists for Warhammer Fantasy Battles is quite more complex than it is building lists for example, Age of Sigmar. It's not 100 points and 10 men. It's, do I want 11 men or 12 men or 9 men? Or if I'm playing Khorne, do I want eight in my unit? And do I want a standard bearer or a musician or a champion? And things get quite complicated straight away. And sometimes you can go right down into the minutiae of the points, and you're trying to squeeze in a point here and there.
Drop a dwarf to give someone a great weapon, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. So I would like to see an app as well. I'd like to see that be part of the modern of the game.
Not checked out the 40k app. It's incredible. It's really nice, and you could do things like you can type in search, so you can be like, oh, what does lethal hits do? And then it pings up the rule straight away. You just tap on lethal hits and it tells you exactly what it does. It's so nice.
Because there is an edition, I can't remember which edition it is. I think the 6th edition book came with a really good glossary in the back of the rule book, but I think the subsequent editions didn't. I don't think the 8th edition one has a glossary, and then you're kind of, I might be wrong, it might be the other way around. But there's definitely an edition where there isn't a glossary, and it can be quite difficult to find specific rules. So an app where you can just search for them would be really good.
Yeah, I love apps.
But I do think they're talking specifically in this article about it being modern to play on the tabletop rather than apps. But hopefully we will get an app or something like that. So why don't we go through the article and the rules that they are talking about. So the first one is about drawing battle lines and about fighting in combat. So it says here that all the models in the fighting rank can attack, not only those in base to base. So I'm assuming the fighting rank is the front rank. It's not a supporting rank. And it doesn't matter what your frontage is. or what you're fighting against, all the models in the front rank will fight against the opposing unit, and that is a streamlining, isn't it? Because previously you used to have to try and maximize how many you get in base contact, and you'd have to kind of fiddle along, and then you'd say, right, well, if I got on the diagonal, and how many are actually in base to base contact? And sometimes, not everyone would be on 20 mils or 25 mils. Sometimes you'd be fighting against 40 mils, and what does that look like, and how do you work that out? And this is just a really good streamlining of that rule, where two units go into each other, and you just go, right, I've got a frontage of 5, you've got a frontage of 7, and that's how many attacks that we get from the front rank.
Yeah, makes sense. I don't know if you remember the 8th edition rulebook too well, but every rule had like a what would happen in a battle breakdown, and it never really covered that. So I just imagine like you'd have 3 guys stood on the side, just saying, well, I'd love to be involved in this combat, but he's too far over there, so I'm not going to bother.
There were loads of little things like that.
Yeah.
Last game we played, it was line of sight, wasn't it? There's an enemy like literally stood next to him. He could have put his arm around him, but it's not in the forward arc, so you can't see.
Just didn't want to like slightly look to his left.
Dare not. But yeah, there are little things like that, I suppose. But yeah, so this is interesting for a number of reasons. One of the things that I thought of straight away was I was thinking about playing against Jeremy and his Dark Elves, and thinking about units that have got lots of attacks. So, for example, Witch Elves. I wondered who was going to be the first person to conga line their Witch Elves all across the front, have like a frontage of like 25 Witch Elves in one rank, and then go into a lone character.
The Witch Elf screen.
25 attacks against one model, or 25 models attacking one miniature. So this will add a layer of tactics, I suppose. I wonder if there'll be a cap if you can't exceed a certain amount in your front rank. And you will have to be careful where you place those lone characters, because it's not going to be a kind of one-on-one fight or 2 or 3 versus 1. It's going to be 10 versus 1 in some cases.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I think the steadfast rule is going to have to come into play, because if you're going to allow something with a big frontage to come in and attack and not be too many ranks deep to combat that, if you've got a lot of ranks, it has to count for something. And if you take a lot of damage in the first round of combat, but you retain the ranks, otherwise it won't be a rank and file game. It will just be people lining up single lines of models and smashing into each other.
Yeah, the one thing I read from the article is like that tactical decision. So it's a tactical decision to deploy you guys 10 wide or 5 wide deep, five deep. So that would be something you would expect to see, I hope. Another thing I'm thinking is fighting rank. I didn't bring it up in the last time, but maybe different weapon profiles will enable a different level of fighting rank. So your sword might be like fight rank 1 or something like that. A spear might be fight rank 2. Great weapon might be fight rank 2. And things like that. And
that would be interesting. Yeah, because here it says it doesn't include base to base, but then what would you say about the supporting rank? You're right, would the whole back rank be able to fight? I guess so.
Yeah, depending on the weapon, maybe. And then if you're flanked, you go into the side or the rear, like a lone character into the rear might be a super deadly idea now. Because suddenly does the rear rank become a fighting rank because they've got someone stabbing them in the back?
That's interesting. There's lots of little nuanced things there. I think it is interesting what is going to happen. And actually in the pictures, they've got frontages of all kinds ranging between 4 and 10. And they've got different amounts of ranks going deep. And, this is probably just to show that you can do that. But I wonder what the tactical implications will be. And it's cool that there are tactical implications of choosing, do you want more attacks or do you want more ranks? That's always been a part of the game. But it sounds like it will be a bigger part of the game now. And it sounds like it makes the game a bit easier to play. So I have to say I am all for this one. All right. So keeping on the theme of combat, the next thing is a new mechanic around combat resolution. What happens if you win or lose combat? Now, I think I'll just read it because there's a little bit to it. So, one thing we were keen for Warhammer the Old World to represent was the push and pull of battle, capturing the way in which a hard-pressed army will gradually succumb to fatigue and attrition. To achieve this, units that lose a round of combat will often give ground reluctantly rather than immediately breaking and fleeing, while the winner can advance to press their advantage. Players will quickly learn, however, that a cunning enemy will use this push and pull of the battle to lay traps, and an advancing unit runs the risk of exposing vulnerable flanks to a well-timed countercharge.
I think there's so much we could do with that. I'm getting all kinds of crazy ideas with that. I want to build like small little chaff units, and you're going to put them out in front, and you're going to be like a screen, and your goal is to disrupt the enemy as they come in. So, you can almost dictate where your enemy's going to charge, what's going to be pulled out of formation, and then just slam cavalry into the side when they're not expecting it.
So you want to kind of hold just long enough so you don't completely flee, but you just pull them back out of formation just that little bit.
Like not a complete chaff, like not a speed bump, but something that's quite hardy, like I don't know, iron breakers. They get pushed back a bit, but they're not going anywhere really.
Yeah, that would be cool. There are lots of implications for this. I do think that this was a rule back in Warhammer Fantasy Battles 3rd edition that you would fall back a little bit if you lost combat, but you didn't flee. Michael Stockin, if he's watching, he runs the Warhammer Fantasy Battles 3rd edition Facebook group. So if you're watching, mate, let me know if that was a rule in 3rd edition. I think I'm right in saying that. And if you're interested in Warhammer Fantasy Battles 3rd edition, make sure you check out his Facebook group as well, because it's really cool.
Would it be worth putting a link in the comments or a link in the description?
Let's put something down here for people who want to have a look at 3rd edition, because it is cool.
Because I do. That's why I've asked. I want to look at the Facebook page, to be honest.
So the thing that I was thinking when I thought of this pushing and pulling were two things, really. Firstly, it was like, what's it like when like two shield walls slam into each other and they're pushing and pulling? And it does seem to actually reflect what a battlefield might be like and add that extra kind of level of it can be quite cinematic if things play out on the battlefield, how you can like see the battle going in your head. So I think that's cool. The other thing that I thought about was that, does this mean now that we're going to get more objective-based scenarios? And then if your opponent is on an objective, you don't make them flee, you can push them off the objective and gain control of it. That made me think that might be something that they're doing. I mean, I think really the only main objective previously was like Watchtower and things that, control the Watchtower and stuff like that. But we didn't have kind of objective-based scenarios that we get in Age of Sigmar and other more modern games, and they want to modernize the game. So I wonder if that's the case. And there always will be. I think objective-based games are really cool. I like the idea of it because I think you can theme it well. You can say, this land is really important, or this bridge is really important, and we need to hold out, against all odds. So I think it would be cool if we saw something like that, and then this rule came into play not only with pulling your opponent out of formation, but also in how you control objectives.
Yeah, I think it might tie in with the idea of streamlining, not liming, like what we said before about the movement phase. It might be quite difficult to play an objective game with a really rigid movement phase that the 8th edition was.
Yeah, if you are just stuck in combat that will last multiple turns of the game, then no one's gonna take that objective. So yeah, I think you're right there. That is if they're going to have objective-based scenarios, but I can't see why they wouldn't, to be honest. But we'll just have to wait and see.
It's really cool. I really love objectives, and I love it when you can have that conversation with your opponent about what is an objective, right? Sometimes it's worthwhile just being like, oh, let's change the terrain a bit, or we ignore the exact setup and make something cool that's the objective. Like, oh, we've got all of this cool ruins, or we've got all of this cool hill, but now we're going to have the flat ground in the middle of the field. That's the objective. Well, maybe we make it a cool hill, right? Let's fight over the hill.
Very true. The next thing it says, it's just a little throwaway sentence in here, but it really stuck out to me as something that I really liked about Warhammer Fantasy Battles, and I'm really pleased that is staying. I just have to find it because I said it's almost sort of throwaway. Combined with the freedom to create and arm characters as you choose from a wide range of options, players will have lots of strategic choice when making their units and writing their muster lists, which is really cool because although, we're talking about streamlining and modernizing, we don't want the heroes to be like they are in Age of Sigmar, where it's you pay 120 points and this is your hero. I really liked all the different magic items, especially going back into the previous editions. I look at my 6th edition army book and it had pages of different artifacts and different ways you could build characters and different nuances you could do. And there were lots of different builds of characters that I would personally take for doing different jobs. I might have one on an eagle and he might go and chase a war machine, or I might have, one who was stubborn and put him in a unit so I could hold out a bit longer. And it was interesting that there were all these different builds and you didn't really know what your opponent was going to take. Whereas I think we lost a bit of that in 8th edition because the range of magic items just became so small, and they're the ones that are kind of just more optimal that you would always take. So actually that list became even smaller then. So I like the idea that you can customize your characters and you can do some interesting things with them, hopefully.
Oh, absolutely. I want to spend an entire week building characters to play a 2-hour game. I want to come back. Oh, is that magic item the best one I can do, or is it going to be the coolest one I can do? That's what I want to do. I want to build my ogre. No, what was the most fun one I built? It was an orc war boss with the twin fencing blades on a magic carpet that flew around the table. Doing silly things like that is absolutely what I want. But I want the rest of the game to be streamlined. Give me my own time to have silly thoughts about character builds.
I think you're right. I think you want a bit of silliness because there is a little bit of unpredictability, and there are things about the old world that are quite comical, and Fostek's folding fortress and all these sorts of items and things. But when you get to use it in the game, you want the game to. I think we want the game to be easier to play and less clunky than it was in some places. But as I said, without kind of dumbing it down. So good that character builds, are staying kind of pretty much as they are. But I would just like to say, more is better for me. More choices and more options is always cool.
Yeah. I think it goes a bit beyond that, like the list muster. So I think it's the whole army list might be quite nitty gritty, which is fantastic news.
All right, and the last thing in the article to talk about is the magic phase or the lack thereof. I think there's probably the most to say about this as there is of anything in the article. So I'll just read the text because there's quite a lot to kind of take in. It's a massive change. It's definitely the biggest change that they have revealed so far. So it says, magic is integral to the game, though the mechanics of its use are simple. The untutored wizards of the old world practice strange laws of magic of their own devising, manipulating the winds of magic and crafting spells that suit their purpose. While such recklessness might alarm some, it gives wizards the freedom to cast a wide range of spells with ease. To reflect this, spell casting has been liberated and spread throughout the different phases of the game rather than restricted to just one. In doing so, we've ensured that every spell available to a wizard can have a significant impact on the battle, cast at the right place and at the right time. Situations where a single spell can decide the outcome of a battle are rare. The focus has shifted from keeping track of dice pools or hands of cards into the positioning of wizards. This means players will have to plan ahead, moving their wizards as carefully as any other unit, both to ensure they can bring their magic to the right place at the right time and to ensure they can counter the spells of enemy wizards. So lots and lots to kind of digest there. I mean, the first thing it says straight away is that the mechanics are simple to use. And then later on, it says that the focus has shifted away from keeping track of dice pools or hands of cards towards positioning wizards.
I never interacted with the Magic phase as a dwarf player, apart from shutting everybody else down, which I thoroughly enjoyed.
But you did as your orcs and goblins, because I can remember being Curse of the Bad Moon off the table in turn 1 with my Lizardman army when I played you.
There is something very exciting about the Magic phase as it was, where you'd have a back and forth with your opponent about what spells to let through, what you wanted to stop.
So this is where it's saying it's moving away from keeping a track of a pool of dice. So you don't. It's before it was kind of about almost like resource management. You had your resource of dice, and you had to choose what you would do. And like you said, you would have to think, is that the spell that I really want to dispel because he's still got 4 dice left, and there's this, there's this other really nasty spell, so I'll probably have to let that through. And it seems like that part of the interplay between the characters, between the players is going, which is a shame because it's something that I really liked. And it's going to be something more streamlined. It sounds to me like it's going to be more like Age of Sigmar, where you will roll 2d6 and add your buffs, and then if it goes through, if the other wizard is in range, they can dispel it, which is much, much more simplistic. And like we said, it sounds a bit like a dumbing down, but I think there is still the opportunity to make Magic cool and interesting because it will interact with every phase of the game. So, in the movement phase, can you cast a spell to increase your movement and to get that charge? Or will you be able to, in the combat phase, create a buff or something like that? So that's quite interesting, and it's more nuanced, I guess, in that way. The other thing that could be more interesting is that now it seems like the generic spell laws are going, and wizards are bringing kind of their own spell law, or spells of their own devising and crafting. So you will get a spell law, it sounds like, that's specifically tailored to your army. And it's not like, I'll just look in the rule book and I'll take, the law of shadow or the law of metal that's kind of open to almost everyone. You will get something that really reflects your army and what it's like. Very cool.
I think that is an excellent idea, to be fair. And I kind of wish it was something they addressed in 8th, because the amount of pickup games I've played where someone's just like done the casual, you're playing Warriors of Chaos, I'm going to take Law of Metal. and he was like, all right, okay. I know my knights are getting, Syrian doomed off the table straight away. I love that idea that Magic's just going to be untamed, and I wish, I know it's not going to happen, and I'm gushing because I've drank a bit of whiskey, but if you could just create kind of a lore of Magic for your guys, and this guy's like quite feral, so maybe he's focused on some like transmutation spells where he's turning himself into a bear. That's only because I've talked to my nephew about The Hobbit.
it might be that case, it might be that, we were talking about when we talked about the Empire, we talked about the different provinces and how they're quite different. Sigmar is quite a different god from Tal, so maybe it will open up different kind of local hedge wizards and spells, and there isn't a central college, so maybe a wizard from the other part of the Empire might actually look quite different and have quite different law. So that would be cool to see, and that gives you something that is more thematic and quite interesting. And like I said, I think that the Magic phase happening in all different phases could actually make it more tactical. even if I think that ultimately I would prefer the magic phase to stay and the resource sharing to stay. I do think that it's cool that it's talked about the positioning of wizards and that the spells, won't just completely obliterate someone's army straight away. I think that is a very good move. I think some of the ranges and the damage on the spells in 8th edition was just absolutely crazy, that you could cast something 48 inches across the table or something like that. And
yeah, that was too much. I remember that one game when I played your lizard men and we shook hands after the first magic phase.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be like that. So I was quite pleased to read that situations where a single spell can decide the outcome of a battle are rare. And I think that is cool.
I like that it's rare because it could still happen. Yeah. Rare can happen. You could be in that tournament setting where you're down to the final game. Whether you win or not depends on you, like, blasting your enemy off the table because they've not prepared for you 6 dice and a spell. Hell, I'd watch that game every day.
Be more like it will mean you get that charge, or it will mean you get that buff so that you weather the storm of attacks, and maybe you aren't pushed off that objective because you've got a kind of scaly skin or something added to your units.
I know this is going to sound really random, but I've been watching a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Recently, so I can imagine, like, in your movement phase, you're going to go, I'm going to cast this spell that makes my movement happen, and you just think, your opponent thinks, oh, well, I'll let that off because it's not going to change. And the next phase, you're like, well, this is what I've got planned because you let me move an extra 6 inches. And then you just, like, chain in spells.
Yeah, that's cool.
That would be sick.
The only problem is that it says that the focus has shifted away from keeping hands of cards. So unfortunately, you're not going
to be Yu-Gi-Oh! In someone, but you could you might be able to start, like, chaining spells, and you may have to think, like, okay, I can't do that in my combat phase now, but if I get the spell off in the movement phase, then I can do it. So you might what seems like we've taken away the tactical ability, we've now added a load more tactics in.
Yeah, I really
more versatility in.
And like I said, I would rather it be that way and be more subtle, because the game just, we all have we did love, we still play Warhammer Fantasy Battles 8th edition. We played only the other day and we do love it, but we tend to not play so much a massive horde versus the Purple Sun, and we tend to play a little bit more, I guess, how it was in 6th, 7th edition, but with 8th edition rules, if you know what I mean. We tend to not go all that way. So that's Magic. I mean, that is really interesting. I would personally, I would rather the dice pools to stay, rather than just 2 dice a spell and add your modifiers. But I think it will make things more streamlined. Hopefully it makes the game easier to play, and hopefully it still has that level, or if not more, tactical, because people didn't play the tactical spells. People didn't play, stop someone's movement. They were just saving up 6 dice for something wild. So hopefully we will see more nuanced and fun and interesting Magic into playing with all phases of the game. And it might actually make, even though Magic doesn't have its own phase, it might feel that Magic is more prominent because it is everywhere.
Would you like to see a more, devastating miscast table? Because they've not tamed Magic. It's just this wild thing now.
I was thinking, and I don't know if this is a reference that everyone will get, but in Skyrim, in the College of Winterhold, there was that wizard called Jazago who used to create all these spells, and he would make up magic spells, and you would end up casting one, and it would just set yourself on fire. And I think that there is going to be an element of that, because these are spells of their own crafting. They might be. It's a bit like misfiring. Cannons misfire, and spells are going to miscast. I think it'd be really funny, actually, if you've got a wizard who's like come up with his own kind of ingenious spell, and then he casts it, but he turns himself into a toad or something, or he doesn't quite know what the implications of casting it on the battlefield are going to be, because there isn't a college and defined laws of magic. I think that'd be pretty funny.
The narrative behind that, this like wizard swindled his way into the army. Oh yeah, I can cast spells. I can cast spells. Turns himself into a toad.
Yeah, I think that'd be pretty cool.
That would kill me straight away.
All right. So the final thoughts of the article are: these exciting game mechanics and many more besides, combined with classic elements of a beloved game, give players both old and new plenty to consider when planning their armies and mastering their tactics. It's an exciting time, and we're really looking forward to seeing the serried ranks of fantasy armies marching across gaming tables once more. I think my final thoughts are: I think it was a really good article. I think it was a really good development diary. I think it's much more substantive than just seeing a map. It's really nice to see how the game plays and how it's different, and that they're, sharing these rules tells me at least that, playtesting is done, the rules are finished, the book must be done, they're kind of ready to roll for production. We think the game is going to come out this year, so, we do need to see more. Now, we have speculated that, because of COVID and a change in direction of development away from Cathay and Kislev towards other more familiar forces, the development has had some troubles along the way. And I think that's led to this kind of drip feeding and just seeing maps. And I think the community, speaking for myself, I've been feeling a bit fatigued by, you get excited and you get hyped up and you really want to love the game and you want to see what's coming out, and then you get a map or you get one model. It's nice to see something more substantive, and I know they're kind of designed to leave you wanting more, but now it does make me want to just hold the rule book in my hands and look at things. I think it's a shame they didn't talk about movement, because movement is the big thing. If I was going to streamline the game, I would look to streamline movement. And what does it mean to wield, and what does it mean to move backwards, and how much does it take from your movement, and can you do a swift reform? And I think movement was quite clunky, if I'm honest. And then the other thing is, they've alluded to this, what would happen if you don't break, but I'd like to see how combat resolution works, because I personally don't know that there will be multiple tables for you to kind of work out your combat resolution and things like that in the rule book. That seems to me to be kind of a thing of the past, but we'll see. But that's what I'd like to know more of. How about you, Tom?
Oh, mate, everything. This is like, I'm sure I said it about the last article, but this is one of those ones where it's just like, the more you read it, the more you think, oh, could it mean that? Could it mean this? You just want to, like, I really want that rule book now.
I always read the articles twice for that reason, because the second time through, there's a little something that you do miss a little bit. But let us know in the comments what you think about the rules. Let us know specifically what you think about magic. I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts about the disappearing magic phase and what it could look like and what it could be. What do you think?
Welcome to our world.
What does that mean?
No more magic phase. It's more shut it down.
So yeah, let us know. Well, no more magic phase and all the rest of I don't even know what I'm saying now. Yeah, leave a comment if you like the video. Drop it a like, please. And if you'd like to see more like this in the future, please subscribe. This video has been sponsored by Tom's favorite brand of whiskey, and we will catch you next time.